A steel monster rolling across a smoking battlefield. A turret the size of a small house. Armor so thick that enemy shells bounced off like pebbles on stone. In the final years of World War II, the Germans unleashed something that looked less like a tank and more like a land-bound battleship. Soldiers who saw it didn't forget it. Historians still argue about it. And gamers across War Thunder, World of Tanks, Hell Let Loose, and every World War II simulator out there keep resurrecting it in digital form again and again. This wasn't just a tank, it was a statement, an engineering flex so bold, so ambitious, and so utterly self-defeating that it became one of the greatest paradoxes in military history. This is the story of the King Tiger, the 70-ton armored giant that promised unstoppable power and delivered one of the war's most fascinating failures. A vehicle so far ahead of its time that it helped seal its own defeat. And today we're rolling deep inside the engineering, the legend, and the downfall of the tank Germany thought would turn the tide of the war, but didn't. Once you understand what made this Titan tick, you'll never look at bigger is better the same way again. To understand why the King Tiger existed at all, you have to step back into the collapsing front lines of 1943. The tide of the war was turning. The Germans had lost North Africa, their eastern advance was crumbling, and the Allies were gearing up for massive offensives on every side. German high command believed that the only way to regain control was through technological shock. Not more tanks, better tanks. Machines that made every Sherman and T-34 look like toys. They wanted a weapon that could strike fear before the first shot was ever fired. What emerged from the design rooms of Henschel and Porsche wasn't just a tank, it was a fortress, thick, sloped armor. A long-barreled 88mm KWK-43 gun capable of ripping through enemy armor from more than 2 kilometers away. An engine struggling to haul 70 tons of steel. A drivetrain is constantly on the verge of collapse, but on paper, it was terrifying. The Allies called it the Tiger II. The Germans called it the Königstiger, Bengal Tiger. But soon, people would call it something else. The beast that couldn't save its own war. The first time Allied tank crews saw a King Tiger, they didn't attack it, they stared at it. This thing looked invincible. Its front armor was nearly 7 inches thick, angled to multiply its effective resistance even further. To a Sherman or Cromwell crew, that frontal plate may as well have been the side of a battleship. The 88mm gun was a nightmare. This wasn't the same weapon used on the earlier Tiger I. This was longer, faster, and deadlier, one of the most feared cannons ever mounted on a tank. It could punch through nearly every Allied tank before they were even close enough to return fire. In simulator games today, players still feel that same rush when they lock onto a target miles away and watch the shell cut through armor like it's made of paper. The King Tiger feels powerful, it feels invincible. But reality is never that simple. Behind the steel walls and monstrous firepower was a flaw so critical that even the thickest armor in the world couldn't hide it. The King Tiger wasn't just big, it was too big, too heavy for its own suspension, too demanding for its own engine, too complex for its own mechanics. Every piece of it pushed the boundary of what 1940s technology could handle, and often pushed it too far. It was the perfect example of over-engineering, brilliant ideas wrapped in layers of impracticality. Its massive weight tore up roads. Its drivetrain overheated. Its engine, a Maybach V12 designed for vehicles half its size, struggled to move the giant. The tank used overlapping road wheels that jammed with mud and snow. Its transmission cracked under stress. Its fuel consumption was absurd, requiring resources Germany no longer had. On paper, it was a masterpiece. On the battlefield, it was a diva. It demanded constant maintenance, constant fuel, constant repairs. For every hour spent fighting, it needed dozens behind the lines just to keep running. In the laboratory, it was unstoppable. In the real world, it was exhausted. Even if the King Tiger had been mechanically flawless, it still faced another problem: time. By 1944, when the King Tiger finally began rolling onto the battlefield, Germany wasn't in a position to support it. The Luftwaffe was weak. The Allies had air superiority. Supply lines were collapsing. Fuel was scarce. Between Allied bombings and advancing armies, factories struggled just to produce vehicles, let alone spare parts for a tank more complicated than anything in the war. Every King Tiger that broke down, and many did, was often abandoned because there simply weren't the resources to pull it back, repair it, or resupply it. It wasn't that the King Tiger was defeated, it was that it was unsupported. A superweapon without a superpower behind it. While the King Tiger never existed in the massive numbers its designers imagined, the battles it did fight became the stuff of legend. In Normandy, Ardennes, Sandomierz, and Hungary, these tanks terrified Allied forces. Crews who survived encounters with them often told stories of shells bouncing harmlessly off the armor, or entire platoons forced to retreat after a single King Tiger rolled onto the scene. But for every moment of dominance, there was another moment where the tank simply stopped due to engine failure, a broken gearbox, or cracked suspension. More King Tigers were lost to mechanical breakdowns and fuel shortages than to enemy fire. Even in its greatest victory or its strongest battlefield appearance, the tank's own engineering always lurked underneath, ready to sabotage it at the worst possible moment. Imagine building a monster that can destroy anything it sees, but might destroy itself first. That was the King Tiger. Today, decades after the war, the King Tiger is more famous than ever. Not because of battlefield triumphs, but because of its mythical status in games and films. In digital form, it's everything it was meant to be: indestructible, terrifying, and dominant. Gamers want that fantasy. They want the unstoppable tank Germany dreamed of. But historians, they see something different. They see a warning, a lesson in how weapon design can fail, not because it's weak, but because it's too strong, too complex, too heavy, too late. The King Tiger represents a clash between imagination and reality, a tank that looks perfect when painted on the side of a propaganda poster, but crumbles when it hits the mud and chaos of real war. And that's what makes it so fascinating. It didn't fail in spite of its engineering. It failed because of it. When engineers look at the King Tiger today, they don't just see armor thickness and muzzle velocity. They see a case study in problem solving and problem creating. A tank designed to be invincible, but only on paper. A machine that pushed 1940s technology past its breaking point, showing how easily brilliance can warp into excess. The King Tiger wasn't just a tank. It was a promise the war couldn't afford. An attempt to create a land-bound superweapon in a time when Germany couldn't even build enough trucks. And yet, that's why it remains one of history's most iconic armored vehicles, because it embodies the tension between ambition and reality, between engineering genius and engineering blindness, between what a war machine could be and what it should be. Ask any historian, any mechanic, any tanker, and they'll tell you the same thing. The King Tiger is unforgettable precisely because it shouldn't have existed. A miracle and a mistake welded together in steel. If this deep dive into one of the most legendary tanks ever built got your gears turning, share your thoughts below and tell me which iconic war machines you want to explore next. Until then, stay curious and watch out for anything that looks invincible on paper.